Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Spiritually Speaking. You may or may not recognize my guest. This is Allana. We have recorded before, but it's been about 9 months ago. And welcome back, Allana. I'm so
Thank
excited
you.
to have another conversation with you.
Thank you, Dee. I appreciate your inviting me on again. I'm looking
You're
forward
very
to this.
welcome. Me too. I'm excited. So, what would you like to talk to us about today?
Well, last time I think we touched on energy healing and energy. Well, energy. It's all around us. We're made of energy. So energy healing, animal communication, which is one of my favorite subjects. We can even say interspecies, intuitive interspecies communication. So that's when two different species have telepathic communication or just a communication with two different species, and also animal reiki, so healing animals, healing with animals. And then also one of my favorite subjects too is animal augury. So signs and symbols and meanings of animals that come into our daily path. So lately, like, I've been having feathers show up again. Like, I'll go through times when no feathers show up. I'll be on a walk, and then there's feathers like in my path, and I'd be doing the same walk, like, let's say, every day with my dog, and then now there's like feathers. So I pick feathers up and look them up and see what they are. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. So yeah. So animals that we interact with on a daily basis that show up for us. You might be out walking, or I'm out walking, and I have had feathers show up again recently. Yesterday, for example, I decided I was going to take a quick walk, not my normal time and not my normal path, um, in my neighborhood. And so I'm walking, and I see this thing sticking out of these people's yard, and the yard was all like dry grass, and this thing is sticking out, and I'm like, what is that? So I got closer, and it was this beautiful um, owl feather.
Wow.
And at first I was thinking it was a hawk feather, but it ended up being an owl feather. And I'm trying to think of the species of owl right now. It's eluding me, but you can get on Google, snap push the little photo button, the camera button, and take a picture of that feather for identification. And so I was able to identify it. And to me, it just feels like a beautiful gift. And so then I, look up, like, I know what owls mean to me without having to look it up. And it felt like it was a gift, wisdom, endings and beginnings. And also, owls are harbingers of endings, so death.
Mm.
But I felt like it was a good omen. So I'm bringing this up because this to me has been one of the things that my whole life I feel like has been very prominent. Animal visitations, animal signs, and I pay attention. I totally pay attention. And I live in a very suburban area in Orange County, California, and we get all kinds of animals here. And I'm a person who looks for animals. So I collect the feathers. I put them in a jar. I got a gift from some crows the other day, which was amazing. So right now I have a container that I've been putting the current ones in. It's a nice little crystal vase. And I hung that. It's sort of a necklace with a charm on it that was left for me by some crows. And so that's pretty cool. Yeah. So
That is cool.
yeah. And so it just keeps me on my toes. It's like, so crows for me are, magic. It's always been a totem for me. Crows and ravens. Um, And so I just kind of like it when they show up, and I've done a couple of rescues of crows. I saw one get hit by a car one time,
Mhm.
and went out of my way to get it out of the street, so it wouldn't get completely run over. It like clipped a car and then was in the street. So I pulled over and picked it up and put it on the side of the road. And when I was doing that, like, I don't even know how many crows showed up, but they were just coming and circling and making noises. And then after that, I started getting feathers again in my path, them leaving me feathers. And it was pretty cool. So I like it. It feels good. And then there's times when animals show up and it's not so good. I get a feeling with it. And I think we all do. That's part
Yes.
of our spidey senses that all of us have. So it's, what shows up first, and pay attention to that. If you get a feeling of, that it's good, then go with it. If it doesn't feel so good, go with that too.
Hmm.
Um, and then just kind of figure out what it might mean for you. It's all personal. There's no, you can look things up. There's so many resources for looking up, the meaning, the spiritual meaning of an animal. And so look them up, but then come up with your own meaning, what it feels like for you.
Right. I agree with that 100%. And I find it so fascinating that you're talking about feathers because I also collect feathers. And
I can see.
these
Yeah.
here were gifted. These are owl feathers, and they were gifted to
Yeah.
me from a friend. And then this is
Nice.
a a red-tailed hawk feather that was just gifted to me here recently, which is
Nice.
absolutely amazing. And I get so excited. But the other day when I was at the springs, I thought, it's been a while since I found any feathers in my path, like what you were talking about. And I actually found three feathers that I picked up that day. And I did see four, but one of them was really kind of beat up,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't collect that one, but there were three beautiful feathers that I actually did collect. So I think it's kind of cool that you brought that up.
Well, there you go, right? And there's no coincidences. It's all, in alignment. And yeah, and like I had mentioned before, there's been times where like no feathers will show up, and that's always been a thing, is feathers for sure. It just feels like a gift. So I
Yeah.
love that. Years ago, I was gifted eagle feathers, and I had friends that owned a river rafting company, on the Snake River in Idaho, and or it was Montana actually. And so every summer they would go and they would do river raft journey, adventures for people. And so they would bring me feathers. I never asked for them. I They just brought me feathers and said, "These are yours. You need them." When we found them, we felt like they belonged to you. And
Wow.
I was amazed at that. And I'm talking 30 plus years ago, when I lived in Utah and I worked at Snowbird Ski Resort. And these people worked at Alta Ski Resort. They're both in the same canyon, Little Cottonwood Canyon in Utah. And I was so honored with that, but I really didn't understand at the time, like, what that really meant, like why they felt that I needed them. And since then, I've always been attracted to Native American culture. But since then, I have found out that it's actually in my DNA, that I have it in my family tree and on both sides of my mom's family. And since then, I started doing ceremony, and I've used those feathers. And so it's pretty cool.
That is
Pretty
cool.
cool. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing. I love that
Yeah.
so much. And I love that your friends like just felt you when they
Yeah.
saw those feathers and they knew you needed to have that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of crazy because I always had that. I think there's four of them. One of them is an immature bald eagle, different feathers, from different parts of the eagle. But yeah, so years later, it kind of hit me how profound of a gift that was, like sort of prophetic on their end, and so yeah, I love that. So yeah, it's just these things are part of my life, and it looks like it's part of your life too, where, we accept that these are, nature's gifts, and they are valuable to us. Like, I love how you have yours displayed. It's gorgeous. So yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that we have that in common. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that is very cool. It's pretty special. And I feel like a lot of people dismiss this kind of stuff because they're expecting these like profound, earth-shattering, kind of messages that are like lit up in neon lights and that kind of stuff. And and it's not always like that. Very often, and more often than not, it's a very quiet, gentle message, like finding a feather
Yeah.
and that meaning something to you, or a crow leaving you gifts, which they're famous for. They really are.
Yeah.
Crows have the coolest kind of community dynamic where they actually, because I've researched crows a little bit on that, and if they like you and they feel safe with you, they'll actually bring you gifts and they will protect you, and they tell their friends that you're a good person. And likewise, if you're not and you're mean to
Yes.
them, they will also tell that to their friends as well, and they will act accordingly in that respect as well, which I think is absolutely fascinating.
It really is. And so that kind of leads to, let's talk a little bit about, well, before we get off the subject, I wanted to address something that you said. You talked about, the feathers that don't look so great, right? They're kind of raggedy and, that kind of thing. So I had an incident. Well, I say incident. I had a thing happen once where I was taking a walk, and I hadn't seen feathers for a while. And on my path, right in front of me, was this kind of raggedy crow feather. And I was like, oh, a feather. And then I was like, I'm not going to get that one. It looks kind of raggedy. And then as I walked past it, I was like, wow, that's still a gift. Like, even though it's raggedy, doesn't make it less valuable of a gift, right? But then I said to myself, if I find another one, I'll go ahead and pick that one up, take that one. And so I don't know. And actually, I'm kind of losing the story a little bit because it happened a few years ago. But what I remember is that I did find another one, and the message with it was what I just said. Just because it's raggedy doesn't mean that it's less valuable. Just like the idea that we want these like totem animals to be like a wolf or a whatever, right? And sometimes it's something like a roly-poly bug,
Right.
or something that is not, you would never think would be your, even a totem for you. You don't even think about it. But all animals are valuable. They all have, every one of us has value, and it's not greater or less than the other.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to remember that. There was a time when earthworms were showing up all the time. And I love earthworms as a totem. They are, without them, our soil doesn't get regenerated. And, there's so much behind what an earthworm does. And so if you apply that to your life at the time, what might that mean for you?
Right.
And that's really it. That's really what it is. And so the subtleness of those things, are important to consider, especially if it's something you're interested in.
Yeah. And get curious if it's not something you're interested in, right? Get curious and just explore it. And you might
Yeah.
find that you get some really amazing information by that exploration.
Yeah, absolutely. And and yet generally how I feel about that too is that it applies for the time that you are interacting with that animal.
Mhm.
It might even be just that day. It could be, or you're in a time of this lesson, or this information, and then it'll be done. And then it's on to, something else. So right now for me, it's crow, um, red-shouldered hawk, and the owl. I can see him, but I can't remember the name of him. Anyway, the species. So So that kind of plays into the idea of animal communication, communicating with another species, even though it's through finding feathers or, if you have visitations. And what I mean by that is, you might be driving and you have you might see a bird that maybe flies in front of your car, and then let's say you're driving and then you see a sticker of the same animal or same bird, right? And then later on in the day, you might see something else. Maybe it's a stuffed one of those animals or something like that, but that's three. That's three you've seen. And so it's like a theme, right? So it's getting your attention, and usually that's how it works for me. If I get, three, then I know it's like, all right, what's the lesson here? I'm paying attention now. You know, one time, okay, I see you. Twice, Third time, it's like, okay, I get it. um, so that, part of the animal communication with wild animals, that could also be, domestic animals, but generally you're going to have that type of interaction with a wild animal. Um, Birds usually, because they're everywhere. Birds are everywhere, and then wherever you are in the world, you're going to have different species of birds, and also maybe migratory birds. And if you're a person who likes to listen to the birds in the morning, or because listening to birds is amazing. You can tell, if you start to pay attention, and then, again, research, or I hear a bird that I haven't heard in a while, I might go outside and try to find that bird and see what it is. And to me, I'm excited by that. It's part of nature. It feels powerful for some reason. I feel like I'm being called, and it's just simple. There's no, it's just a nice gift is what it feels like.
Yeah, it really is. And when you were talking about birds, I remember when I was driving to Ocala one day, it's about a little over an hour drive. And the strangest thing happened. A turkey walked across the road in front of me, which is really, like that's not a common thing. You might see a turkey beside the road and stuff like that, but I've never seen one cross the road in front of me before. And I actually had to slow down for it. It was pretty funny. And then a little further down the line, a turkey crossed the road behind me in the same direction. It was, and I still hadn't delved into that very much to see what that means, but I felt like it meant something, because what
Yeah,
are the chances that one would go across the road in front of me like that and then one behind me on the same trip, you know?
exactly. Yes, that's exactly what I'm talking about. And especially because it alerted you to, oh, wow, that's two. And the direction, like where were they coming from? Where were they going? What direction were they headed? And if you were to take notes of that and then just kind of break it down, to the meanings and symbolism of those things, you could say, north to south, east to west, left side to right side. And all of those things, have a meaning. So it's like, you know, interpretate. It's basically interpretation. You get to interpret it, what that message meant for you. Um, Turkeys are kind of amazing because they're sacrificial birds,
Mhm.
right? We sacrifice turkeys for our nourishment.
Right.
They're seasonal, even though we know they live year round. But I mean, if we were to look at the symbolism, those types of symbolism, and I guess I'm saying this because it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and then what might that mean for you? So, um, you know, also, like, what are the habits of those animals? Like, where do they live? um, what do they do? What's their job? There's all kinds of information about animals. And so, that's really when I say augury, that's reading, knowing animal species. And then, um, you get to, it's sort of like what's the word? Like a portending of, what's happening, even with the weather, right?
Yeah.
Like, right. And same thing with trees. clouds, so nature, kind of
Yeah.
reading nature. So let's see, there was something I was going to say. Now I kind of went.
That happens to all of us sometimes.
um, so so that's wild animals, right? And then if we were to try to do actually, let's say communication with animals. So that's reading paying attention to nature around you, looking up what that might mean for you. But then let's say you want to take it a little farther, and let's say every day in your backyard or whatever, you've got, wild squirrels, or you've got hummingbirds or whatever it is. There is a way for you to sit, and I think most people actually, if they sit with nature and they feel that connection, I think that they might agree that there is some communication that they are sharing with that animal, but maybe they wouldn't know that that's really what they're doing, like, because they're not doing it on purpose. Like, they're not sitting there with the intention that they're going to communicate with that animal. It's like somebody who will say, "Oh, my dog told me, this and that, whatever it is, me and my dog. Oh yeah, we have conversation all the time, But then they might say, "Yeah, I don't believe in animal communication."
Right.
So, it's something that we all do, and it's something that's part of our innate, being a human, communicating with nature. So, there are ways, that you can practice a deeper communication, not only with wild animals, but with your own domestic animals. So, your dog, your cat, a bird, whatever it is that you would have within, that you're taking care of, right? And that rely on you. So a horse, if you have farm animals, those animals are different. They're not wild animals. They're a little more connected to you. They depend upon you. So your communication with them might be a little easier, if you wanted to practice, having communication with them. Um, but what I found is, kind of, once you realize that that's actually what's happening, it tends to become, it sort of opens up. Like, it opens up something in you to where you go, "Oh, there it is. That's what I'm looking for," or "That's what animal communication is." It's not behavior. It's not, like something you've trained an animal to do. It's a communication between, two different species. So you and an animal, and you're getting information from that animal. So that would be depending upon how you take in information. So, are you hearing something? Does it sound like a voice? Are you getting a visual communication? Are you, seeing an image of sorts? And these are all different ways that we communicate psychically.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody has different ways that they receive information. So there are ways to explore that, especially if you don't know how what your strong, what your senses are that are the strongest in receiving psychic information. But if you're open to knowing that it actually is real, you just start to practice, sit quietly with your animal or in nature, and, like a meditative state, but it doesn't you don't have to, go too deep if you don't want to, but, just sit quiet and quiet your mind. And I always feel like it's a heart to heart, or a mind to mind communication, or an energy to energy, soul to soul, where you are opening up to receiving,
Yeah.
from that animal. And it's either going to come right away, or it may not come at all. But if you practice it and you sit in that space, eventually you're going to get something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty fascinating. We have a dog in the house, and his name is Gunther, and he's a little bit old. He's 7 now, and he talks in complete sentences like a person would say things to you. So it's really fascinating because I know that a lot of animals don't communicate in full on sentences like that. They'll give, you know, a little snippet or say a word or something like that, or just give you an impression of a picture or something like that. So it's really fascinating that he does that. It's really actually, when I first started hearing him say things, like I really thought I was making it up because it
Yeah.
sounded like another person was talking to me because he's so intelligent, you know? So it was really a little bit disconcerting at first, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool now though, because it's so different. We have another dog in the house too, and she's more like just her face is very expressive. So you can almost see what she's thinking just by the look on her face. Because I've never seen a dog whose face is this expressive. It's amazing.
Yeah. So you just described perfectly, what could be a possibility for communication with your animal. And the complete sentence thing, I totally get because that's how I receive information is I get sentences, and then sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell you this, because it's like, you can hear me, yay, whatever, right? And it's just, blah, 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 blah. And humor and, kind of amazing.
Yeah, technical difficulties. I don't think I can hear you. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Oh, real life is real life, y'all. A little technical difficulty, but we're good now, I think. So, so we were
All
talking
right.
about how the animals get really excited because you can hear them then and they want to share more with you. So,
Yeah.
how many people, I mean, besides sitting and just being with it, is there anything else that someone could do to help facilitate their ability to communicate with their animals?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is, you don't have to actually even be with the animal to communicate with the animal, right? So I guess what we're talking about here is the number one thing is to be in the now, so meditation does that. And when I say meditation, I think, sometimes we can overthink meditation or think that we have to you know, be in a certain position or, but basically what it is and for me, how this worked the best for me when I first started really, trying to be in the now, get into the communication space is take some nice deep breaths and get in that, clear everything out, breathe and be grounded. So and what that means to me is that if you're breathing, you're stopping and you're doing it on purpose, which means that you are in the now, you're concentrating on your breath. And
Right.
then I can keep my eyes open, but if I closed my eyes, I would then put my focus, my closed eye focused here, third eye. Sometimes when we and I think if somebody were to be doing this, you would understand what I'm saying because you can have your eyes closed. And if your senses are so, everywhere, but if you hone it in, you can almost see your gaze go right here
Mhm.
with your eyes closed. You can almost
Yeah.
see it. So that helps because it brings me back to a centered focus. And then, relax your body. Relax your body. It helps me to go outside, be in a walking, place, clear it out, come back, and then just take the breaths, be in the now, center that eyesight. And then I also imagine this really helped when I was first learning Reiki for me to be the facilitator. I don't know what this is, but I would imagine the top of my head popping open,
Mhm.
almost like it was a jar, or on a spring or something, where my head would open up and I would receive information that way.
Yeah.
And that seems to be the way that I once I get into that state, it's almost like it just happens.
Yeah.
So if so, and then I've talked to other people and they kind of do that same thing. There's something about having the information come through the top of your head and then fill you up. There's a meditation that I learned with my first animal communication teacher that was called Grandfather Sky and Grandmother Earth. So you were pulling energy from the universe through the top of your head, feeling up, your body, and then pulling energy from your feet that would be roots in the ground,
Yeah.
and pulling that energy up and meeting at your heart, mingling that until you felt very filled up and centered. And and then either hold that in your container or let it out. And either way, whatever works, it's the idea is to focus, ground you, bring you to yourself, to your heart, to be able to be ready to communicate with the animals and with others. If you're doing Reiki or you're doing some sort of heart to heart communication. And you can also do this without having to really do anything. In other words, you don't have to act it out. Like we could stretch our arms out and bring in the energy. We could, make a big deal about it, but we could also just imagine it.
Yeah.
Right. And that also helps if you're going to go, into, let's say, work and you have to maybe talk to people or go in a meeting or a communication with with someone, right? Prepare yourself that way. I
Yeah.
can tell that you have either done that or.
So I'm just laughing because I work at Walmart right now and I have to do that on the daily. It is, yeah,
Mm,
I have to do it on the daily because there's a lot of energy flying around that place. It
I
is
bet.
insane. So yeah, it just made me giggle about how many times I'm like, nope, and push my bubble out a little further.
Well, I think that that's another important thing, is that we have to know that we are energy and there's energies around us, and not only what we can see, but the unseen energies. And every one of us carries energy, every one of us. And so, and we know, there's an expansion of that energy. That energy can reach as far as you can imagine and then come back in. And so I almost look at it like, here's your energy, here's this other energy, and it has the ability to even push into your energy if you let
Yes.
it.
Yes.
It's like lava lamp. It's like a lava lamp, right? It's bubbling around, and then sometimes they come in together and make one big bubble,
Yep.
right? And so it's like if you don't want that bubble coming into your bubble, then yes, you need to have your boundaries with your
Yeah.
own energy. And it's not only humans and animals, it's energy of a building,
Yes.
energy in the house, right? Energy of an open area outdoors. I would say most people probably have felt that, right? At some point you feel like, oh, I don't want to go in that room,
Right.
right? Or I don't like the way that feels over there, so I'm not going, So the negative feeling of things like that. But then there's also the positive feeling. Oh, this feels really good. I want to be out here. I'm going to allow myself to kind of open up. So it's good to remember those things, and it's good to protect your energy because we don't want to carry anybody else's energy. Have that lava lamp merging, because then it's going to throw you off. You won't know what's yours and what's not yours.
Yeah.
And it can be very draining, very draining. So I think it's good practice to, first of all, understand that that is something that does happen. It's not woo woo. We are energetic beings.
Yes.
And if something happens in a house, let's say, for example, so like, let's say there's a lot of arguments in a house, maybe there was a divorce. And then let's say the house gets sold. And so the next people that come in, if there hasn't been a clearing out, there could be residual of that energy left in that home.
Right.
And you may not even understand what's happening, right? So I think it's important just to know that we do have the ability to be able to clear out energy. Animals do it, like dogs will do it by shaking off,
Yeah.
right? Same thing with cats, So I'm assuming that, wild animals are doing the same thing. And they are very, very in tune to subtle energies. So it's
Yeah,
important.
they really are. And it's unfortunate that us humans don't pay attention because that's all we have to do. We have
Yeah,
the ability to pick up on those subtle energies as well. All we have to do is mindfully pay attention.
right. That's right. Well, and let's face it, we've all been taught, that we've not been taught about it.
Right.
It's like when it shows up in our life. And now here's the interesting thing though. If you listen to people will say, they'll use the word energy a lot, like,
Yeah.
oh, my energy or that, whatever energy. But then when you start to come down to like what we're talking about, and if it feels kind of foreign, people want to dismiss it, like it's some sort of scary thing or anti-religious thing or something where it's not acceptable or that it's woo woo or you must be crazy or, whatever it is, but it's not. It's our human birthright. It's who we are.
Yes.
Um, I remember somebody was talking once about, medical, let's say you're in medical school and I guess we would practice on a cadaver, right? We would or even being a veterinarian, I would imagine, you're practicing on, a cadaver. And there's no energy in that being if they're not alive.
That's right.
And so I feel like, the part of the conversation that I remember was like, how then do we measure? And I think there's ways to measure energy, but we have to remember that, when we expire from this life, our energy goes with us.
Mm.
And I believe that's, it's not only, how our bodies work. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but I am an energy healer and I've always understood energy. And I never had a word for it necessarily, but I'm a medium.
Right.
I've had spiritual experiences and spirit come to me my whole life since I was a child. And so I feel the energy. And now I know what that feels like. And so when we expire, our energy goes also. So what is that? Is that our soul? Is
Right.
that, what is it? And so I'm sure if we really dug in, we could probably find more information about that. But that's what I feel like it is that it's our electrical circuits, it's our power up batteries. But it's goes beyond just our body. It's outside of our body. I think there's like cameras that catch some of that, right? Aren't there like there's some
Yes.
technology now that catches our auras, right? Aura photography.
Yeah.
So
It's fascinating, the science of it. And I'm not a scientist either, but I'm absolutely fascinated with the science of it. And it's just so incredible because the thing that keeps us from being able to do all of the things, every single one of us, is the human factor, right?
right,
It's that logical mind because we're actually capable of all of these things. We just don't believe it. So because we
right.
don't believe it at this deep level, that's why we are not able to access those amazing powers, gifts, whatever you want to call them.
Right, right. And I believe that all of us have it. It's
Yes.
not, it's, like there, I think what happens is like someone like me, I was never really shut down. Like my mom encouraged art, imagination. We never got shut down. And but I think it's normal for children, because you hear these stories all the time, children have imaginary friends, or they
Yeah.
say, I see grandpa so and so, and they never met grandpa so and so,
Right.
and then at some point we get shut down, whether it be by our parents, or the world, or your teacher, something. And then I think it's sort of normal for us to actually shut it down anyway, somewhere in when we're learning our own body, right? And we're learning ourselves. So when you're young, let's say, I don't know, 8 years old, 12 years old, to, let's say somewhere in high school, and maybe even after that. And then it's like it starts to come back,
Yeah.
right? It starts to come back, and we start to experience, because we've shifted now. Now we've learned who we are. We've learned our body. Our body's now matured, and so that seems to be a typical story of a lot of people that understand that they had this connection of their psychic senses.
Right.
And then there's also the idea that the closer you get to death, it starts to come back as well.
Hmm.
Because if you believe in, there's all kinds of words, but let's say reincarnation, or that you, or soul, coming into a human experience, right? And you're going to go out as your body's going to expire, and you're going to go on as a soul. So we're closer to those things from it being a child, and then to when, before we pass away.
Right.
um I had two experiences in my life so far, where I saw the aura of two individuals, right before they died, and they were both young. One was 27, and one, I'm not sure how old he was, but he was probably in his 30s. One of them died in a avalanche. He was a really good friend of mine, and the other one died very dramatically in a airplane crash. He was a pilot, for the Army, I believe, or the Air Force. It was the Air Force. He was an Air Force pilot. But both of those individuals, what I saw with them was this sparkly aura. The fighter pilot I saw the day before he died. And my friend, that died in the avalanche, I saw it in him the last time that I saw him alive.
Wow.
And the crazy thing is that I had someone call me after the fighter pilot died, and she said, I saw something, and I think I can talk to you about it. And she saw the same thing I did, same thing.
Wow.
So I find that amazing. I don't really know what that means necessarily, other than they were, death was upon them. And my friend who was 27 that died in the avalanche, he was one of my greatest teachers after his death, to give me the confirmation that what I have experienced in my life of being a medium is real. It's real for me. That life doesn't end when we end. When our bodies go, it's like the energy goes somewhere. And I
Yeah.
had visitations from him for a few years, like all the time. And it was so crazy. It'd be in dreams, or he'd be in my vehicle, pushing on the back of my seat. I mean, to the point where I would be like, what is going on? And I'd be driving, and I'd have to pull over, like, what is going, like, is there something behind me in my seat, And then I'd have to check in with myself, like, what was I thinking about before this happened?
Right.
And in that time frame, it was like, yeah, I was having thoughts about either him, or about death, or life, or love. breath 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 is life. That's why when we talk about, meditation, and why it's such a big deal about breathing, because that's our life force. That
Yeah.
is what revs up our life force. And so You can't breathe when you're dead, So
Yeah.
I think it's important, to understand that we take it for granted. We take this vessel for granted. So anyway, there's
That's very
that.
true. Oh, we do. We do so much. And, that's one of the things that's been coming more forward for me is how much we need to take care of our physical bodies. We want to be able to do things when we're 85. We're not going to be able to do things when we're 85 if we don't take care of our physical bodies. I know that's a little bit of a diversion from animal communication and energy, but it is though, it is energy, and it's what enables us to be able to have these communications as when we're in good health. I mean, we don't want to, yeah, we could go off on a whole nother podcast about that, but yeah, I feel like that's very important. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, Dee, it's kind of interesting because you said, kind of going far off of like from animal communication and energy healing. It's really not because the other thing I thought of is, yeah, okay, physical body, but also our mental body, our emotional body, our spiritual body. We have all of this inside of this vessel. And so when we do energy healing work, so bioenergy field work, okay, so emotional freedom technique. I know a lot of people have heard of this now. It's popular, it works, it's quick, it's simple, and same thing with Reiki, energy healing. And there's, a whole bunch of other modalities that are dealing with energy healing. But I know, like, when I first learned emotional freedom technique in 2005, what you address first with EFT is the pain point. Where's the pain point? So, emotional, physical, mental, spiritually. What's the pain point? What's bothering you? What trauma are you experiencing? And on a scale from 0 to 10, where are you? And then we do the tapping, which activates our energy meridians, pressure points on our body that have the ability for us to shift that emotion, to calm that emotion. But what you're doing is you are addressing, the pain point. So the negativity, the negative thinking, the whatever it is that's going, that's not balanced in your body. And then you work with that, so you address that first. And then you sort of go to sort of a neutral place with the tapping. And then what do you want to happen? So what you're doing is you're getting your mind and your physical body wrapped around the pain point, because we're human. So we take care of our body, but we forget that, when you say, I mean, trauma lives within us, pain lives within us, disease lives within us. So how do we address those things? We have to, like for me, like I explained to you about the animals, I'm willing to use any help I can get that would allow my mind to think differently about a situation, an emotional pain, all of these things to help myself to be healthier.
Right.
So taking care of our bodies 100% with good foods, treating food as medicine, reading your labels of your food.
Oh,
This is
yes.
huge right now. We're in complete control of what goes in our mouths, right?
That's
And
right.
with everything, what are you watching? What are you listening to? Are you out in nature? Are you confined to a house, a home? What are you doing to help yourself? Um, so I feel like it all goes together, but I think we need to remember that, that all of those things create who we are. It's not just a physical experience that we're living,
Right.
And so when we address those things like, holistically, right? Not just give me the pill.
Exactly.
So I think it's just important to know that. And to be honest, I mean, everything that we've talked about today kind of has something to do with that. Like if we have a good relationship with our animals, And our domestic animals, the animals that live with us, they take on our pain. They take on our emotion. They take it. I've had animals take a spiritual hit for me to where they took the pain, they took the bad juju, so I didn't have to.
Right.
And I know that sounds pretty, again, kind of far off and maybe woo woo, whatever, but I think there's some people that will understand that. And then I've had other animal communications where, for example, there was a cat that the cat got COVID. The
Wow.
cat was diagnosed with COVID because the owner had COVID. They didn't, and this is a couple years ago. And so I got to communicate with this cat, and the cat basically was fine and then he wasn't. And in the communication I had with the cat said that I took this on so that he could be better. And that cat died the next day after I had the communication with the cat. He was saying goodbye to everyone. But that's amazing.
That is amazing.
So
It
we have
is.
to remember that, to check in with ourselves. If your animal has some goofy behavior, check in with what's going on with and there's a lot of stories and examples of like, I had a dog that had anemia. She had to have a blood transfusion. My daughter had anemia and had to have 2 blood transfusions. I've been anemic on and off throughout my life. Just like I was going to say normal anemia, but 15 years old, pregnancy and menopause. My daughter's was at 15, but my dog had it.
That's
So how does
wild.
that happen, right? Out of all things. Yeah, you can call it whatever you want, call it coincidence. But what I now know because of practicing this with people and animals is that our domestic animals will take on what's going on with us.
Yeah. Yeah, they will. And I do believe that very strongly. They will sacrifice themselves in a heartbeat for us. It's pretty incredible.
It is. It really is. So I think that's important to know. If you love your animal, then open up to the fact that, you're healing and keeping yourself healthy mentally, spiritually, physically, emotionally is important to that animal. And then they in turn get to do that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true.
And
Very,
good food.
it's so deep, Alana. It's so deep. It's this just beautiful, spiritual, amazing, magnificent thing that we get to experience in this life. And it's just incredible. And it just, you know, I really, I really know that this message will reach everyone it's meant to reach, and that they will see the depth of their relationship with animals in this world and energy. And if they haven't already found the depth in that this will allow them to explore that, get curious and explore it and experience that depth for themselves, because there's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Yeah, there really is. And I think a lot of people love animals. And, you know, we we can elevate our experience as a human by giving them, you know, giving them a voice,
Yeah.
being a voice for them, honoring them. And it helps all of us, helps the planet, raises the vibration of everything. And yeah, I think it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And I appreciate you coming on here and sharing all of this information with us today. I feel like you went pretty deep on it this time. And well, not that you didn't last time, but I feel like it was even deeper this time. So I appreciate you coming back and chatting with me again about it. And if anyone is interested in working with you, because you do work with people and their animals,
Yes, I
so
do.
where would they get in touch with you, and what can they expect?
So the best thing to do would you can go to my website, intuitiveheartstudio.com. You can look and see what I have there, but I also have a schedule system. So you can click on that and see my offerings. Um, you can be anywhere in the world and work with me. Distance work is just as powerful as being one-to-one, being in person. I do live in Orange County, California, if you are in the area, but otherwise you can be anywhere in the world and we can connect. I can work with you with, Reiki healing, and intuitive healing, and readings, or I can work with your animal and do the same thing. Generally, when I work with animals, it's almost like you're kind of getting two for one, right? It's like the animals and you kind of, go together. So that's, I really enjoy that. And again, if there's something off, if you feel imbalanced of sorts, or you have a pain point somewhere, you feel stuck, the work that I do helps to address those things and to to rebalance your stuck places, to help you work through, you know, negativity or any health issues. And I really enjoy the work that I do. It's very rewarding on my end to help people and their animals.
Yeah. And it's so beneficial for owners and pets alike too. So that's amazing. It's just like this beautiful trifecta. I love it. So, do you have any last bits of wisdom you'd like to share before we close out today?
I think that it's important to remember, and I know it seems maybe a little cliche because I think a lot of, we're in this space where we forget that to get off our technology,
Yeah.
get off your technology and go outside. Doesn't matter where you live. You could live in an apartment, walk outside and there's always going to be nature around you. And even things like, as silly as it is, but the weeds that grow through the cracks in the cement sometimes have beautiful flowers, right? Dandelions are like, you can eat dandelions as long as they don't have any kind of, pesticides on them, right? Birds are everywhere, and what it does is it helps our immune system. It helps us to ground back into the earth. And we're losing that connection because of we're not paying attention anymore. We're indoors. We are on our technology. And not to say that that's bad. It's not. It's actually very cool. But at the same time, you don't want to lose that nature connection. Take off your shoes. Take off your
Yes.
shoes and walk in the dirt, on the grass, even on the cement. Just be barefoot. Take off your shoes.
Yeah.
That's my best advice. That's my
Yes,
advice
mine
to
too.
myself too.
My least favorite part of my job is that I have to wear tennis shoes. It drives me bananas. I love being barefoot.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
barefoot pretty much all the time when I'm not at work. It's so true.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah,
And I mean, having that connection with the earth, there's a reason that it's so important for us to do that. It's not just a frivolous thought. It's very important for us to feel that actual physical connection with our feet on the earth. So that I love that you mentioned that. So it's one of my favorite things to do is be barefoot.
yeah. Me too. Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Alana. I will put your information in the description box below the video so that everyone can connect with you. I'm going to change this back to, there we go. So that everyone can connect with you and get you to help them with their communication with their animals or just with their own personal selves if that's what they need. So thank you once again for being my beautiful guest again today. I'm so excited that you came.
Thank you, Dee. It's really good to talk to you again. I so appreciate it, and I love this conversation. So thank you so much, and see you again sometime.
Yes, we will. And thank you everyone for joining us on this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, especially if you know someone who is interested in animal communication and would find this useful. So thank you all. And until next time, I love you all.
Right.